Spamton is probably the biggest character that was introduced in Deltarune Chapter 2, and for some odd reason, I haven't really given him that much attention in any of my Deltarune theories, except for like one 6-minute video. So today's video, we'll be hopping back into the Deltarune theories to discuss the famous businessman, Spamton G. Spamton. Make sure to like and subscribe. Enjoy the video. As I said, Spamton is probably the biggest, most popular character in all of Deltarune so far. He is so popular that he even rivals that of Sans. The reasoning for that is just because Spamton's personality and humor is exactly what defines a Toby Fox written character. And of course, with a lovable character like Spamton, there's got to be a lot of lore behind this character, because for some reason, that just seems to be a common trend with these popular characters. Anyway, as I said, Spamton has a lot of hard to understand lore regarding his character, most specifically with the mention of two key factors: the year 1997 and somebody named Mike. If you speak to Spamton in his shop, he mentions the word Mike while looking down with his glasses covered in static. Clearly, TobyFox wants you to pay attention to this scene and the character name of Mike. Hang on to this information because we'll be needing it later. In terms of the year 1997, Spamton mentions it at every moment he possibly can, to the point where I'm pretty sure while he's sitting alone in his shop with nobody around, he just mutters the year to himself. He is so obsessed with the year 1997, but what exactly could it mean? So far in both Undertale and Deltarune, the concept of years is just non-existent. Undertale took place in 201X, which is not an actual year. So the fact that we're now bringing real-world years into the mix, this is bound to have something of importance. But what if I told you both the year 1997 and Mike mean absolutely nothing? Alright, I know a lot of people are probably going to hate me for saying this, but I am in strong belief that Mike isn't actually going to make any appearances in any future Deltarune chapters. Both the year 1997 and Mike are both references to a commercial that aired in 1997 called Mike's Big Shot Soda, meaning that TobyFox is obviously hinting at this one commercial in particular. Why? Well, it's just a joke. Not everything that TobyFox puts into his games are going to be of lore significance, and I think this is just an example of one of those things that seems like they are lore significant, but really aren't. Now, how could I be so sure that Mike won't appear in any other future Deltarune chapter? I mean, it could easily be a reference and have lore significance at the same time. Take a look at Jevil, for instance. I'll also be bringing him up later, but Jevil mentioned Queen and the Roaring well before Chapter 2 was released. So it makes sense that Spamton would also mention what's happening in the next Deltarune chapter, just like Jevil did. But wouldn't that be too obvious? Jevil mentioned Queen and the Roaring just briefly. He never drew attention to it like Spamton did with Mike. I feel like it would be way too obvious for Mike to have an importance, as Spamton just put so much emphasis on Mike. Now, to put it even further, Mike also is not a name I would expect from an Undertale or Deltarune character. I mean, the name Mike is just so average, like your average Joe. Just take a look at any other character's name. Berdly, Ralsei, Flowey, Frisk, Asgore, Jevil, heck, even the name Spamton. All of these names are all ridiculously unique that you won't find in your everyday life. Imagine you're in a restaurant, and your waiter comes up to your table and is like, "Hi, my name is Heats Flames Man." See, that just doesn't happen. Now imagine if a raider came up to your table and was like, "Hi, my name is Mike." Now that is way more likely of a name to hear. So that's why I just don't think Mike would be a character in any future Deltarune chapters. But what exactly is Spamton then? Well, I think the answer is also in plain sight. But first, we need to go all the way back to Chapter 1 and talk about Jevil. Deltarune has made it clear that there is a tradition going on with secret bosses. The ties between Jevil and Spamton are too obvious to ignore. For starters, Jevil's theme can be heard plenty of times when interacting with Spamton. It appears in both his shop and during his Spamton NEO battle. Next up, we have the fact that they both don't actually make much sense. Both are so obsessed with their ideologies that they both seem completely insane. So clearly both are so similar that the game developers are just begging to compare the two. So in order to determine the history with Spamton, we need to understand the history regarding Jevil first. Understanding Jevil is a little bit hard, and not many people actually understand his history. However, if you go back to Sham's shop after defeating Jevil, you actually do get a backstory about him. Sham and Jevil used to be extremely close friends if you didn't know, until one day Jevil met someone, who Sham never explains who that person is. Afterwards, Jevil starts going insane, and his ideologies expressed in his battle start coming to light. Sham states that he was the one who had to lock up Jevil due to his insanity. However, Sham wasn't let off the hook, as Jevil's ideologies made Sham's ideologies, quote, darker, yet darker. Now, how does this exactly relate to Spamton? Well, let's take a look at Spamton's backstory. In order to view Spamton's backstory, you first must come back to his shop after beating him in a secret battle outside of the Snowgrave route. There will be Addisons there that will give you Spamton's backstory. According to those Addisons, Spamton was exactly like them at one point, but he did have bigger dreams to become a big shot. Then one day, Spamton received a call on his phone, and all of a sudden, he got exactly what he wanted. He had become the successful businessman that we all know and love today. So, who was the person that made Spamton a big shot? Well, let's take a look at the very last Addison, who stated that they actually picked up the phone right after Spamton had left it. They couldn't make out exactly who was on the phone, but the Addison claims it was nothing but, quote, garbage noise. Now, where have we seen that line of dialogue before? That's right, on the cell phone in Chapter 2, where if you call it, it will output, quote, it's nothing but garbage noise. Clearly, whoever is on the other end of the cell phone in Chapter 2 is the one who also called Spamton. Who is this person? And what exactly does that have to do with the quote from Sham, darker yet darker? Well, comparing these both side by side, we can determine that it's the exact same person who made them insane. But who is that person? Well, taking the quote we got from Sham, that quote has actually appeared before in Undertale, inside of a secret entry known as entry number 17. And for Spamton, the sound that plays on the cell phone that Spamton heard is also the sound that plays during entry number 17. So both the quote and the noise appear in the exact same location. And we can determine that the person who is speaking in entry number 17 is the infamous W.D Gaster, which means that W.D Gaster was the one who made both Jevil and Spamton completely insane. As of right now, all signs point to him being the one that causes all of the secret bosses in Deltarune. Now, I know not many people will be satisfied with this hypothesis. A lot, and I mean a good chunk of this community, hates the concept of Gaster because people blame him for everything lore related. However, you can't just ignore the facts I presented here. So I hope I have at least presented a solid argument for this theory. Now, if you don't know exactly who W.D Gaster is, here is a video that explains his complete character.